As she began to heal and let Jesus and her mentor, then she started to believe that God had a big plan and purpose for her life. Today, she is a thriving adult. She works at a lab company in customer service here in Raleigh. Super
Wow.
happy. She's really strong in her faith. And she shared recently, she still has Cody's picture on her nightstand. And she looks at it all the time. Time spent at Hope Reigns changed her life and really cemented her relationship with Jesus.
Welcome back to Living the Grace Life. I'm your host, Jennifer Sakata, and you've made your way to the corner of real grace for your real life. Today's real life takes us to an unexpected ramp for grace. But first, did you ever want a horse growing up? I did. But like many of you, I never had that opportunity to befriend a horse day after day. However, the few times I did, it was pure serenity for a young girl whose day-to-day life was anything but serene. My guest today believes that horses, mentors, and Jesus are a powerful trifecta that can help solve the mental health crisis facing kids all around the world. Kim Tschirret is the founder of Hope Reigns, a haven for children seeking hope and healing through the profound connection between kids and horses. Kim's journey, born from her own rocky childhood, led to the 38-acre sanctuary of Hope Reigns in Raleigh, North Carolina. Kim's been featured in national publications and podcasts, and especially so on my dear friend Amber Cullum's Grace Enough and Neil Matthews' With Other People's Shoes. She's also been highlighted in the best-selling book, Joey, which was written by Jennifer Bleakley. And friends, I could not put this book down. I don't think I've ever read a book as quickly as I've read through Joey because it's an incredible story of Kim's dedication to transformation for Jesus. I've never been to Raleigh. I know some of you have, but after discovering Kim's story and the unique on-ramp to grace that Hope Reigns is, I'm chomping at the bit to get there and meet everybody. So friends, would you help me welcome my new friend, Kim Tschirret? Kim, welcome to Living the Grace Life.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I'm really excited to be here with you today.
Oh, this is great. Your story is an incredible one, which our listeners will hear quickly, but it's a unique one as well. Before hearing about you, I had not thought much about equine therapy or the power that horses have to connect with kids in the midst of trauma. So just really looking forward to our
Yeah,
conversation.
God created them so uniquely, and they're really the bridge. Their story of rescue is
Mm.
really the bridge for our kids to open up. So it's really a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about Kim Tschirret, about your family, and about how you first came to experience God's grace.
I've been married for 30 years, and my husband and I have two kids, a son and a daughter that are now adults, which is a
Oh
whole
my
different phase of
goodness.
life.
Yes.
Trying to parent adult kids is very different, but they're both fantastic people. And I'm really grateful for that. I am the CEO of Hope Reigns and started that about 16 years ago. We're celebrating our 15th anniversary this year, which is really exciting. And
Wow.
yeah,
Congratulations. That's
thank you.
wonderful.
It happens really fast. I
Oh.
don't know how it happens. It all happens fast. So,
And you've been
but
through a lot to get there. So that's
absolutely.
pretty amazing.
But I grew up actually in Ohio, so not far from you.
Oh, not far.
In a just upper middle class family that looked really great on the
Mm,
outside. And what people didn't know is that my dad was an alcoholic and was very
mm,
emotionally and verbally abusive. And I really never knew safety as a little girl in my house. Everything
mm.
was always chaotic and we were walking on eggshells and we were never allowed to talk about it. So there was no
Mm. Oh,
acknowledgement in our house. And so I thought I was crazy. What is happening?
yeah.
I knew something wasn't right. And I think for kids that go through that type of thing, I think you implode and go within, or you start performing. And
Oh, I can,
I chose the
yeah.
performance route to try to
Hmm.
get any sort of love and attention. But my wound was really that there was something wrong with me. That was what I thought because I couldn't understand what was happening. But my dad, for whatever reason, everything always had to look good. So I think this was part of everything looking really good. He bought me a horse. And so I ended up having this really beautiful horse and would go to the barn. And that was really the only safe place I had. And really, I just have such vivid memories of sitting in his stall while he was eating
Mm.
hay and just pouring my heart out. My horse was really the only thing I ever said what was happening in my life or was really authentic and honest with. And after I went off to college, my dad sold my horse and I went into performance mode, working many
Oh.
years in the business world, trying to find my value, right, in this world,
Mm.
which doesn't work.
Boy, and those tendencies, they start so early on, don't they?
They really do. And then they become
Mhm.
ingrained and you don't even know you're doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Oh,
Yeah.
that's a tough reality. I had shared with you earlier in our conversation that we have a lot in common. I
Yes.
didn't grow up with a horse like you did, but certainly there's a long reach to addiction, isn't there?
There really is. Yeah.
Someone else's addiction has a deep impact on who we become and how we grow. Along the way, though, you experienced God's grace fairly early on in your life. I think what I remember from our earlier conversation was the wooing that God began to do in your early 20s. Tell us
Yeah.
a little bit about that and how God began to unwind and unfold this perfectionist tendency that was so natural for you.
I think I lived my life for a really long time saying, when this happens, then I'm going to be happy. I don't know if
Okay.
anybody else has done that. Like, when I
Yeah.
move, then I'm going to be happy. When
Hmm.
I get this job, when I get married, when I
Mm.
have a boyfriend, like whatever, insert whatever. Because again, I was seeking the world for things to make me feel good. And they just kept returning empty. Nothing ever
Mm.
really returned. And when I was still living in Chicago, dating my husband, we started just randomly going to church. And I would
Huh.
literally just sit in church and weep. I
Mm.
couldn't process. I didn't know what was happening. We ended up getting married and moving to Raleigh, and we're in the Bible Belt here. And so
Oh,
my real
yeah.
estate agent, yeah, the first thing she did was say, "Hey, you want to come to my church?"
My goodness.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Wow.
And went to her church. And really, honestly, it was the very first time I
Mm.
ever heard it's Jesus. Maybe I've heard that
Oh,
before, but church was always this thing we went to on Easter and Christmas that looked good in
sure.
my family. And I think I was just so ripe and ready by that time, and my
Mm.
heart was so open to change that the moment I heard it was Jesus, I was just all in.
Oh,
And yeah, it's funny. I always said I had a pretty successful career in marketing and for startup companies. And I always said I will never drive a minivan and I will never stay home with my kids. And guess what
how'd that work
happened?
out for you?
It did not work out. But the moment I accepted Jesus, I was like, I'm done working. And I stayed
Mm.
home and with my son and then had my daughter and had just this really sweet sort of 7 year period of really
Mm.
counseling and mentorship and really digging into the word. And then God really started to
Mm.
plant the seed of he had something more for me to do. And when I started
Yeah.
really investigating about Hope Reigns.
Sounds like wooing is exactly the right word for God's
Yes.
pursuit of you. I love that.
Yeah.
Makes me think of the end of Psalm 23, where it says, "Surely your goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life." There's that
Absolutely.
persistent following. Oh, I love
Yeah,
that.
opening doors, like take this step, take this
Yeah,
step. Yeah.
I love it. Let's talk a little bit about Hope Reigns. So, you grew up in, admittedly, as you've shared, a very rocky, difficult situation. How in the world did you get from being a highly reputed business marketing person to a mom in a minivan to Hope Reigns? Take us there. Pretty
Yeah.
big journey.
It is a big journey. And I just think God's used it. He doesn't waste anything, Jennifer. Every broken
Never.
relationship, every job I've ever had, just all of it, the good and the bad. And I think somewhere around year 6 of my journey of staying home, I got invited to go to this really awesome women's retreat where the speaker asked us this
Oh,
question. She said, "What is something that you used to love to do that
huh,
you never do anymore?" And horses
love
popped into
that.
my head. And I hadn't thought about horses in a really long time. I left them in college and was done
Yeah.
with that part of my life. So I just thought, okay, God, what do you have here? And I started to take riding lessons again. And I thought I was going to
Oh,
buy a horse. I just started investigating
yeah.
and it was like, no. And I ended up discovering a book written about a group in Oregon
Mm.
that was doing something similar. And this was in 2009 during the recession. And that was like it. I just knew that was what
Huh.
God had for me to do. They were pairing kids in crisis with horses that had been rescued.
Mm,
And I just remember it was in the recession and everybody kept telling me, you're crazy. Like businesses are going under. You can't start
mm,
a ministry. Like you have no money, you have no land. That was the big thing
mm.
is you'll never find land. And the first thing
Oh,
God did
yes.
was give us 20
Hmm.
acres for $1 a month. And
What? Wait, 20 acres, $1 a month. How did
yep,
that happen?
it just
Obviously, God was
it was
doing
just a
something, but
miracle. Yeah, my kids, we took the kids, they were little at the time, to an Easter egg hunt on this church's property. They had 70 acres in the middle
mm,
of North Raleigh, this crazy property that used
oh
to be a
my.
dairy farm. And it was like this
Oh,
whisper of the Holy Spirit. And I just put my business plan together and went and talked to them. I thought, this will just be good practice, right, for
mm,
somebody to give
hmm.
me some feedback. And they
Oh,
immediately said, here's 20 acres, $1 a month. We'd love to have your ministry start. And so that was our starting point. That's where the Joey book happened, was the starting point there.
okay. So basically, two Starbucks coffees was the starting point of Hope Reigns.
Yes.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Only
Yeah.
God could do such a thing. Oh my
Yes.
goodness.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So it
what
was
is
pretty
it that
cool.
you do? Tell us a little bit more about what the ministry looks like and how does that connect horses and kids?
So we like to say that we're a faith-based equine mentorship program. And what that means is that every single day we pair a child or teen in crisis. So they've gone through some sort of significant trauma. Maybe they're struggling with their own like mental health or suicidal ideations, grief, loss, abuse. And we pair them with horses that have been rescued from similar circumstances. So all of
Mm,
our horses have a story of overcoming their own abuse, neglect, lots of different hardships and things that they've gone through. And they're really thriving now. And so when the kids and
mm,
teens come out to the ranch, most of the time they're very shut down because a person has hurt them. And
sure.
they automatically connect with the horse in their story of rescue. And it's fascinating because sometimes they choose a horse based on their story, and then
Mm,
sometimes a horse chooses a kid, which is a really special experience. But they get to come out every single week and have this free of charge 90-minute session with their horse and mentor. And really, what we're after is we're about sharing the love of Jesus with these kids, and we're helping them build these resiliency skills so that they can heal and have great coping skills for the future, because that's what they ultimately need. There's 4 things horses teach people: trust, communication, boundaries, and leadership. And kind of all of our sessions are geared around those 4 principles and really teaching our kids all these different tools through interactions, through the Holy
mm.
Spirit showing up and doing things, and then some activities that we have planned.
That is pretty incredible. There are so many ways we could go with all of those
I
few
know it's a
comments.
lot.
Oh
I know.
my goodness. And we'll catch a lot of them. But before we get there, you must have had some significant healing along the way.
Yeah.
Let's dig into that. What did that look like for you to experience this journey in grace toward grace, which allows you to welcome kids into a
Yeah.
space where they would experience God's grace?
Yeah, I have to give God all the credit for
Mm,
kind of opening our eyes to these 4 skills and the four
yeah.
things that horses teach humans. They're actually the same 4 things that Harvard says kids need to build resilience, which is
Mm,
crazy that we have this secular undergirding, but they're also based on scripture, 4 things that we want our kids to know. But for me, the healing journey, it's funny, starting something up is a lot of work, right? And
sure.
it's really hard. I cut my teeth in a lot of entrepreneurship, but what I realized, Jennifer, probably about 4 or 5 years into building Hope Reigns, is I got so burned out. And
Mm,
man, I took a sabbatical. I needed time off. And I realized that I was on this hamster wheel, right? And I was
yeah.
just running and doing. But what I realized is I was still performing for God. I just took my
Oh,
father wound and applied
yes.
it to God. He certainly couldn't just
Mm,
love me, right?
mm,
I couldn't just receive and accept that I was just okay and loved because he created me. I was
mm,
still performing for him and it was really exhausting. And so
mhm,
that was a huge turning point for me and my leadership and just really my relationship with God. A lot of healing came out of
mm.
that and is still coming out of that. Because, like you said earlier, you can't just turn that spigot off. It's not like
Yeah.
you just stop doing it.
Yeah.
But yeah, but there's been a ton of healing along the way. And I think my big passion is I just want to make sure all kids have access to hope and healing, right? Because
Mm.
the mental health crisis, most of our kids live below the poverty line. And I just really want them to be able to find that hope and healing.
Yeah. It reminds me of something you said in another conversation. You said there is not anything outside Jesus' ability to heal. And that's what
No.
I'm hearing you say again.
Yeah, because I tell you what, the stories of these kids that come up our driveway, every
Mm.
year they get worse and worse. And we just think,
Oh,
Lord, I don't know how you're going to fix that. And then we can't bear that burden. In fact, we tell our staff and our volunteers every day at sessions, we have 90 minutes that we do our best and
mm,
then we let it go because it's not, we can't heal anybody, right? That's
mhm.
not our responsibility. We provide the opportunity and the connection. We share our story. And of course, we always point people to Jesus because that's ultimately where they're going to find their healing.
Yeah, yeah. I love your description of the powerful trifecta of
Yes.
horses, mentors, and Jesus.
Yes.
That's such a it's a great image actually of how they all work together.
The horse's story of rescue is the bridge, right? That's the
Mm,
first thing that these kids connect with. And then horses have so many just natural God given ways that just being in their presence helps reduce anxiety and depression. And they teach us so much about communication and relationship and connection. And then our mentors, I mentioned that Harvard study.
mhm.
Harvard found that kids in trauma, the most important thing that they need is they need one safe adult relationship. And that's what our mentors do every single day. They show
Okay.
up week after week with the same child, the same teen, and they say, I
Mm,
see you, I care about you, I value you. You have a plan. God has a plan for you, you have a purpose. It's
mm,
just that undergirding of that relationship and connection. And then
mhm.
obviously, a relationship with Jesus is the foundation for life.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah.
those three are really vital.
I had asked you before our conversation about a Bible story that speaks God's grace to you. And I loved the one that you listed from Mark 5 when Jesus heals the woman who had been bleeding for a long time when he
Yeah,
touched her robe.
yeah.
That's such a powerful image of grace. And the only place in scripture that the word daughter is
No,
used in
I
the way
know.
that Jesus addresses someone. So, unwrap that for us and why that story speaks so significantly to you about God's grace.
Yeah. I think I just identify with her in the sense that I was so desperate when I needed
Mm,
Jesus and just that desperation to get to him, the desperation to reach out, touch his robe, that
yeah.
moment of immediate healing. And I think also, like you said, the fact that he said daughter, right?
Mm,
Daughter, because that's my wound. My wound is the
yes.
father wound. And for him to say,
Hmm.
daughter, go, your faith has made you well. And that
Hmm.
she had this incredible faith. And it was not really because she did anything magnanimous, it was just her pursuing.
Yeah.
And so that I feel like even today, I'm still pursuing Jesus. I'm still
Mm,
going after him. It doesn't
yeah.
always look pretty. I make lots of mistakes, but I think, and we say this about our horses too, when you work and train with a horse, you honor the try, whatever they're, because we're training, we're trying to get them to do something. And most of the time it's a human problem. I'm not
Yeah.
communicating well. I'm
Yeah,
not
sure.
listening to them really well. But whatever it is that they do to move toward us, we're honoring that try. And I feel
Mm,
like God is like that too.
yeah.
I've lived it for such a long time with this mentality of God being this tyrant like my dad,
Mm.
but he's not. And he honors our try.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that image too. Here at Living the Grace Life, I talk about grace as God's forward movement toward us, which allows us then to move toward those around us. There's no perfection needed there. And I love, Kim, how specifically that story speaks to the fact that she did nothing.
Yeah.
She tried, but
Yeah.
she didn't perfect anything. She didn't do anything to earn it. She didn't do a thing to bring attention to herself except
Right.
reach out in desperation.
Yeah. And if I can
Yeah.
only touch him, if I can
Yeah.
only touch the hem of his
Hmm.
robe,
What I
just a
love
really
about that
beautiful.
story too is that right after that, I'm sure you already know this, but the context of that story is that Jesus has been requested by Jairus to heal his daughter, right?
Yes.
He's on the way, and
Yeah.
this woman touches his robe and he stops.
Yeah.
to look at her, to
Yeah.
see her, to be with
And he
her.
knows that she touched her, and the disciples are like, "What are you talking about? There's all these people around."
So, but don't you just love the disciples? We can so
Oh,
relate to them. Oh my
yeah,
goodness.
absolutely.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we've got two, if you will, dying daughters here who are
Yes.
dying in different
Yes.
ways
Yep.
that Jesus brings life to. And that's exactly what you're all about
Yeah.
there at Hope Reigns. I know you've got lots of stories. I've read several of them in the Joey book, but what's a story of transformation and grace that comes to mind to you of maybe one of the kiddos that's come through, or a parent or a staff member?
Going back to the Harvard study that I mentioned, they said kids who don't heal from their trauma can become the adults that are the homeless and the incarcerated and the mentally ill,
Yes.
like all of our adult issues, right?
Hmm.
But if they can heal, they become productive, healthy adults, right?
Yeah.
This is proven in their data. And it's funny, one of the other things that they say kids need in their trauma is a foundation of faith. If you can believe Harvard, the Center for the Developing Child said
Really?
this, yes,
Okay, that's
because
shocking.
it is shocking, but you have to have hope and believing in something bigger than yourself
Hmm.
and that you have
Hmm.
purpose and you're not alone. And what's exciting is this is our 15th anniversary this year. And I know, I can't believe it. And we've
Oh
been
my gosh.
featuring stories this year, all year long, of former clients that are now
Hmm.
thriving adults. And so
Yes.
the story that's most top of mind for me, because I just shared it at our volunteer event, is a young lady named Elena who was in
Okay.
our program probably 10 years ago as a young girl, early middle school teen. And she had been sexually abused by her father and ended up sharing it with a safe person. And her father ended up going to prison, but the family was obviously just reeling. Elena shared she was very skeptical when she first came to Hope Reigns because
Mm.
she didn't want to just talk about her trauma. And when she came, she said, it felt like you were just waiting for me. And there was no discussion of her trauma. It was like, we're so glad you're here. Let me introduce you to the horses. This is what we do with all of our kids and take them
Oh.
around. And she really bonded with one of our geldings named Cody, who had a similar background as her. Week after week, they came out and really built trust. She built trust with her mentor and really started to believe that she
Mm.
was not broken. She had this
Oh,
concept that she
yeah.
was permanently damaged and that the abuse would just define her for the rest of her life. But as she began to heal and let Jesus and her mentor, then she started to really believe that God had a big plan and purpose for her life. Today, she is a thriving adult. She works at a lab company in customer service here in Raleigh. Super
Wow.
happy. She's accepted Jesus. She's really strong in her faith. And she shared recently, oh my gosh, I'm going to try
Oh
not to
my
get
goodness.
emotional, but she shared recently she still has Cody's picture on her nightstand and she looks at it all the time. And she just knows that time spent at Hope Reigns changed her life and
Mhm.
really cemented her relationship with Jesus. And yeah, it's just really amazing.
Oh.
Yeah.
So let's touch that a minute. Let's touch the robe of God's
Yeah.
grace in
Sorry, I
that.
got emotional there.
And that's beautiful. What is it that brings out that emotion in you? What is it about her story that makes your heart so tender?
Oh, I think it's just she had the opportunity that I didn't, and that this is what we want. We
Mm-hmm.
want these kids to be healthy, thriving adults. That's why we get out of bed every day. So to be
Yeah.
able to see it and hear it in her voice and her story firsthand is just incredible. It just gives all of us at Hope Brain such hope and so much passion about what we're doing. Because the enemy does not want, trust me, we
Oh,
get into
yeah.
so much spiritual warfare. The enemy
Mm-hmm.
does not want these kids coming to Christ and learning that they're not
Mm-hmm.
damaged and broken. Yeah.
Yeah. I think on your website, I saw that Hope Reigns is a safe place for kids in crisis, which is
Yes.
exactly who you were.
Yeah.
It goes back to what you said earlier in our conversation that God doesn't waste a single thing.
Yep.
And there are some who may be listening right now who haven't had a personal connection with the tenderness of God, who are
Yeah.
thinking, okay, sure, God doesn't waste anything, but it sure cost me a lot. It was really
Absolutely.
painful.
Or I'm too far gone, or that's not for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. I know you lived in that place for some
Yes.
time,
Yep.
but that wooing, that pursuit of God, one step at a time, has moved you to welcome and set up space for someone like Elena, who
Yes.
can now testify and say,
Yep.
My life has dramatically changed because
Yes.
of Jesus, these
Yep.
mentors, and these
Yep.
horses.
Yeah, absolutely.
If someone is drawn by your story as they're listening today and they
Mhm.
want to be supporters or they want to be involved in part of the Hope Reigns ministry, how can they do that?
Hope Reigns, it's reins.org is our website. And it's exciting this month because we're heading into our Heroes for Hope campaign. This is where we fund
Oh,
all of our horses for the year, all of their care, training and feeding, everything, so that they can be
oh,
there every single day for our kids. And we have 17. So there's a
wow.
lot of them, and it's quite an endeavor. But what's really exciting, we lost one of our foundational
Mm,
horses, Ruka, recently, and we are in the process of looking for two new horses. So if people
mm-hmm,
support this, they're not only going to support our current horses, but they're going to support us being able to bring in two new horses. And
mm-hmm.
it costs about $5,000 a year for a healthy horse to
Okay.
be a partner at Hope Brains.
Oh my goodness. So, friends, this is a perfect time for
It is.
you to get on the website, hopebrains.com, and
.org,
oh, I'm
.org.
sorry.
That's
Let me
okay
say
because we're a
that.
nonprofit, so it's
Oh, oh, of
.org.
course, that's perfect.
Yep.
And I'll be sure to put all the details in the show notes. But hopereigns.org, everyone, and
Yep.
Reigns is Reins, as in reins of a horse.
Hmm.
So you can be in touch with Kim and her team there. How about you personally, Kim? How can people connect with you? There are parts of your story that I know are deeply relatable to so many people. How might people get in touch with you there?
Oh yeah.
And
I mean,
yeah,
my email is just kim@hopebrains.org.
Kim, thank you for taking the time to be with our Grace Growing community here. This has been such grace gold. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. I'm just really super honored to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to share about what God's doing.
I want to go back to that part of Kim's in my conversation where she talked about how God honors the try. We don't have to be perfect or have all the answers. In fact, the truth is, we can't. But God's grace is his movement toward us, an acknowledgement that we're never going to get it right all of the time or even much of the time. Because at the end of the day, that's not where grace lives. Grace lives in that forward movement. God's toward you and you toward God and another. You may not be surrounded by horses or a staff of mentors who love horses as much as the kids in front of them. But here is what's true. You are surrounded by a God who is intent on wooing you, just as he did Kim. Thanks for joining our conversation today. If today's episode has helped you see God in a new way or experience his grace in one of those maybe hidden places you didn't even realize you needed to receive his grace, then would you share this episode with a friend? And here at Living the Grace Life, we would be so grateful if you'd be willing to rate and review our show. Those ratings help push our show out to others who want to live real grace in their real lives. As always, you can find me at jennifersakata.com, on Instagram at jennifersakata, or on Facebook at jennifersakata.author. Until next time, remember to live the grace life generously, friend. Grace for you, grace for them.